Okay, so David, thanks a lot for agreeing to have a quick chat about UCM and the work that we did together there. Perhaps for people listening to or watching the video, you could give a bit of background as to what the company was about, when it started, how big it grew, that sort of thing.
Okay, Andy. Yes, good afternoon. The company was born out of a strategic development idea from business which we'd set up a few years previously and intended to bring us diversification in a market of limited choice, but a huge opportunity within that small customer audience or potential customer audience. So we were fortunate at the time to be able to launch it as a joint venture with a company majority owned by French private equity. But much to my surprise, they took absolutely no interest whatsoever and just took the view it would be successful and effectively left me to get on with it. So this was a new departure insofar as it was an activity not previously undertaken directly, but it did sort of reflect back on my insurance days and work undertaken for a different part of the logistics sector, automotive logistics that is. So it was set up with a plan, but with no customers, limited capital that we had to spend wisely, but a great deal of passion, which I think is, as an entrepreneur, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, it probably won't work. So in 2010, we launched our business and its services at a very big conference in Stuttgart in Germany, attended by the great and the good of the automotive sector. And that enabled us to understand very quickly that although you may have a presence in a marketplace, it doesn't necessarily translate to successfully gathering up the diversified activity you believe to be entirely complementary, because it will be in a different silo in this huge organization you're trying to sell into. So we were fortunate that the mantra of surround yourself with the best people you possibly can, the pool of talent in our management team was way ahead of a business that would have been already successful and delivering good revenues. Here were we, zilch in the way of revenue, but in terms of having a great FD, in terms of understanding what we could do from an IT perspective, and innovation from IT was going to be very significant for us and offer the differentiator which we thought would enable us to capture a segment of the market. And good HR, because in the UK we're subject to the rules of TUPE, so that most likely when we were successful we would inherit people to come and work for us, and we needed to understand how we could do that. So with this great management team we had to find a way to limit our cost. So for anybody watching this, we operated to a plug and play type scenario. So this huge pool of talent that would otherwise have bankrupted us before we got to the end of the second month were simply there when we needed them. But it was a good platform, to combine innovation and dogmatic pragmatism on occasions to keep our show on the road as we developed and as we took it upon ourselves to go out there and try and win our first client, which proved to be incredibly difficult despite having a presence in the market.
Yeah, that's quite a long old journey, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to deter any budding entrepreneur from going down the same path, but we were fortunate that we all had other income streams, and this was therefore not a hobby, but it was just something, an organization, a company that we could do what we needed to do when opportunities arose, bearing in mind that most of our customers would only be going out into the market every 3-4 years, without us incurring a huge amount of cost, and we never increased our share cap. So, and we didn't in fact fully pay it. So although we set ourselves up as a PLC, and a minimum share cap of 50,000, only 50% was paid initially. And we managed to use that 25,000 over a period of 4 years to market ourselves on a least cost basis. Even Ryanair was a luxury. So, but that didn't actually impact negatively upon how we went about it and our enthusiasm to bring that first customer in, which was always going to be the most difficult.
Yeah,
And
so I mean,
it proved.
In a number of ways, it was quite a typical sort of small startup with not much money, bootstrapping. But in other ways, it was quite different in that we went after global sort of household name companies as clients. Took a long time to get the first one, as you say. But the model that you chose with I can't remember if there was any full-time employees to start with, but certainly not for quite a long time. Was sort of was the right one to use it for that scenario.
Yeah, we did our best to position ourselves with the level of credibility you need to be able to open the door, and that too was helped by the depth of our management team that we could call upon to come along to a meeting for an hour. And here we were able to give this impression of, yes, our joint venture partners, a massive global organization, positioned in France. We had a great management team here, and we could introduce our team. Actually, no employees, no system, no office, nothing. We just traded on the back of the other existing business we had and used that for the best possible credibility we could muster in those circumstances, with that great team of people and a little bit of smoke and mirrors, dare I say it.
Bit of smoke and mirrors, but when you did get that first contract, everybody was in place, and you did get the office and you did get the people, and pretty quickly got the system as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I think all entrepreneurs need a little bit of luck, and we had gone 4 years, during which time our joint venture partners changed hands. So the French private equity sold out to this massive with 75,000 employees French organization, fully quoted, very much in the industry of providing intellectual capital into very targeted sectors. And there was us as a joint venture company, no employees, no business. And we managed to go through 2 rounds, as you may remember, of budgeting, because that's what happens when you suddenly find yourselves reporting into a big organization.
Yeah.
And their disciplines. And actually, we got to the end of 2014 and they wanted to close it. They just felt that we'd given it a good try. No criticism. They were very nice people that we were dealing with. But actually, now is surely the time when we should just think, no, that's it. And we were saved literally, because after we submitted that 2015 budget, it was after then, so October time, 2014, we had our first contact with a client that ultimately became our first customer. It was a prospect then, but that involved some overseas travel, quite a bit of overseas travel. And we had to do our best to come across as credible. But actually, if ever anybody needed confirmation that in the end, it doesn't matter how innovative you are, it doesn't matter how much tech you have, people buy from people. It's a human environment.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate that this was a company that was going through its own massive changes, having come under Chinese ownership quite recently before we got involved. And they were already dealing with a global organization, but it just didn't work. And there's a little bit of right place, right time. I happen to have the good fortune to interact with a director of global purchasing that I've gone on with. That too is quite unusual, as a potential vendor. You don't normally get on that well with the purchasing team because they're there to do a pragmatic job.
Yeah, sure.
But we did. And as you say, we were awarded a global contract when we had no staff, no system. It involved very complicated transactional business in China. It required us to have quite a reasonable presence in the US as well as Europe, because they were the primary markets, and we didn't.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, we'd spent quite a lot of time thinking about what would happen if we were successful. And as you say, the 60 days we were given to get up and going, we had a system, we had offices, we had kits, we had people.
Yeah.
So
that was good fun.
When you're under pressure, you can do it. It's an entrepreneur's dream, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
I'll say yes and then worry about how we managed to actually get going, but we did, and we were credible from day one.
So in that position then, and perhaps also thinking back to some of the other businesses you've run in the past, what sort of financial challenges did you have, sort of as the entrepreneur, as the business owner at that stage?
You know, I mean, it was dare I say, it was a good job we had you as our FD, because my focus was entirely to the operational and, you know, the visionary strategy of how we were actually going to manage this new contract. But it was very clear that we were going to have cash flow problems, because all our costs were coming in at a time when we had no revenue, because that was during the first 60 days. And then after we got going and we submitted our invoices at the end of the first month, which was April 2015, we then wait another 60 days, during which time we had big expenditure and no cash coming in. So the whole concept of cash flow forecasting, so we could convince our joint venture partner that we could borrow without having fear of not being able to repay. I mean, I was probably a little bit more optimistic than I felt inside as we made those presentations, but they had to be done. And it's then that you realize that you have to be, you know, financially robust, even in bad circumstances, to convince people that actually you are a good proposition to finance. And we were fortunate that you were able to do that. So we had our, you know, very good budgeting. We had good cash flow forecasting, which I think we started at 6 months and we brought it down to 1 month as well, so that they could see the movement. And once the money started coming in, then there was a big sigh of relief. And yes, we were financing debtors for a period, and in reality, we had negative cash all the time. But again, for anybody who's watching, managing your cash and understanding your cash flow is so crucial in a small business that goes from a standing start to actually being an organization that is actually punching way above its weight and processing and transacting in countries that it's had no exposure to, and how you can manage even that. And we did, you know.
I mean, the cash was probably the major the focus, wasn't it, in those first few months, because everything was sort of so uncertain, and then it sort of settled down when you could predict it a bit more easily, and we started thinking a bit more about what profit and that sort of thing. Yes,
yeah, definitely. I mean, we were fortunate in so far as that by the time we signed the contract, which was actually completed within 90 days of the contract starting, which again, for a big global organization, is good going. It was very clear that our rating and pricing had been very, what should I say, accurate. It was positive. We knew our costs, and therefore we were pretty certain that we would make a profit. But you can make a profit and still go bust. So that focus to cash became a slight obsession, even though we had the benefit of a very deep-pocketed company behind us who were you know, very enthusiastic and on board.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have been if we hadn't have been able to give them the credibility that a good FD can. So yeah, I would say that we would have never really got going if we hadn't have had, you know, that good management team and that good blend of innovation and just sheer pragmatism.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it was quite a big team, wasn't it? It wasn't just the finance, obviously. There was lots of people behind the scenes doing things, but
Yes, I
interesting
mean,
times.
there were. I mean, we went from a standing start to a reasonable nucleus of core people who were going to actually be responsible for the transactional, operational elements of the company, whilst we were still finding our feet.
Yeah,
We used a third-party software application because we couldn't afford day one to go and develop our own, even though that was a clear part of our strategy, that within 3 years that's what we would achieve, and that we expected to successfully bring on board another customer. It seems very slow to only have one customer, but if they're delivering you millions of revenue and it's profitable, and they're one of the key players in a market segment of, I don't know, potentially 30 customers.
yeah, very small, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the fact that it was global allowed us to trade on the credibility that scenario brings when going to talk to other potential customers.
yeah,
Because they just assume, well, if this company's done it, they must be all right. And here we are.
yeah,
So as we always said, it was the first customer that was the most significant, and being able to manage ourselves so that we didn't go beyond our initial share cap, which was only 25,000 in cash, to develop prospects, present to prospects, travel to prospects over a 4-year period. Yeah, that was
yeah,
pretty good. Plus, we had some positioning, documentation, and a website that we had to look after. Fortunately, with a great IT chap I'd met many years before, and who's still part of an ongoing management team. So
sure, yeah,
get good people. You know, it doesn't matter how good your idea is. You can have great ideas, but if you don't have great people, it doesn't translate into tangible outcomes.
no, absolutely. Can
So,
you just sort of summarize some of the results then that you ended up with in this?
so yes, 2015 first year, we had 9 months, and so from the losses that we'd had all those prior years, albeit very modest losses, with all the startup costs, and there were considerable startup costs, and although we'd baked that into our rating structure, that was recoverable over 3 years because we knew the first contract would be a minimum of 3 years. We still came out cash positive at the end of December 2015, and our result, I believe, was about 180,000. But I probably should have looked at Companies House before
I
we
can't
started
remember
this
either.
interview. And then again, so should you, because you're the FD.
Yeah, I remember
But
one of them. Yeah,
yeah, but we were cash positive for sure, and we made a reasonable profit. There was no debt in the business at the end of December 2015. I mean, remarkable, really.
yeah,
And a good measure of the fiscal disciplines that you brought along. And we were fortunate that the key management team still were not employed. You know, we were just freelancers, me included, as the
yeah,
MD.
yeah. Very flexible solution,
Yes,
isn't it?
yeah. So that gave us quite an advantage, because none of us, you know, had our domestic lives dependent upon whatever earnings we could achieve from UCM.
Yeah,
But 2016 was, you know, another watershed year, because we developed, you know, we penetrated that particular customer by driving out further revenue opportunities, which we did by running off all their old claims from prior years. So we inherited 6 pallets of boxes of paper. I mean,
I
it
remember.
seems abhorrent now, because we set up our business in a paperless environment. We were 100% digital. So to actually receive all this paperwork seemed unbelievable. But anyway, we did. And we digitized what we needed to make digital so that we could provide an ongoing service. But that brought us good one-off revenues. And we had, through our collective discussions, ascertained that our transactional rate and revenue would always cover our costs with what a reasonable margin. But actually, the real profit came from when we could exploit other opportunities using the same resource, same assets, and bring in really meaningful one-off revenues.
Yeah.
And so 2016, from memory, our profitability had gone up to about 330,000. Very cash positive. And by the end of 2016, we were working on what would turn out to be a real watershed moment through the issue of a tender that our entire team, with others, so we brought in a couple of other good market people, including somebody who lived in Germany who used to work for the prospect that we were then pursuing. We had the credibility of a global customer. We had by then developed our own system. It wasn't finished, but we were able to, produce some pretty good screenshots of how we wanted it to look. And perhaps we may have indicated that was actually all operational. And in January 2017, as you may recall, we had some very interesting WebEx sessions with this particular prospect, culminating in us all going out to Germany on the 1st of February, that same management team, the same plug and play execs. And we put forward some good, credible ideas, mainly focused towards that particular prospect, saving money by coming on board with us. We use so many buzzwords like glide paths and soft landings. But anyway, the fact of the matter is we were successful, and we were awarded a multi-million-pound contract, given 100 days to get it up and going. So we had to recruit over 40 staff, find offices that could accommodate the 40 staff, furniture, develop an IT system that was very specific to that customer's needs and demands. 100 days sounds a lot, but it isn't. But there too, we had our new offices, we had all the kit. We had a software application that was ready to run. And so it launched 1st of July 2017. Enormous upfront costs, all of which I seem to recall that through the rating structure you were very instrumental in signing off. We just about written off, to the P&L at the end of the first year. And actually we were so well protected and cushioned, mainly through what you thought would be a reasonably pessimistic outlook, because we're always driven by volume. So we could see what had gone on before, but that was no guide to the future. So clearly our predecessor must have been making a lot of money. We made good money, but 2018 turned out to be our best year, and that followed a highly enthusiastic joint venture partner exercising their option to acquire the 50% we held in the other business, which you are still a director of.
So a trade sale at the end of
a trade sale period, which isn't easy. You and I went to Paris a few times. We had some quite difficult meetings because the success of winning our second customer, and a much larger customer in revenue and profit term, came during those negotiations, and we therefore had to say, but that was the price, but this is a new price. But dare I say it, and the people we sold to were very honourable. They weren't tricky, tough negotiators. We had a few sleepless nights, I guess. They took us to the edge of the cliff and then brought us back. Our focus being that they wanted a trade sale, 100% cash day one, no earnouts. Quite reasonable warranties, because they've been a joint venture partner, and therefore they'd signed off everything that could appear in a taxation covenant. And we had very good projections for 2018, and we did even better than those projections. So and you
stayed on for quite a few years, didn't you? And they did very well out of that deal. They got their money's worth, I think.
If any viewers are still awake, I'm obviously not that young, so I was living in Cyprus when all of this was going on, which wasn't ideal because I ended up commuting back to the UK every week as opposed to being semi-retired, or every other week, I should say. Much to my surprise, they asked if I could stay on for 3 years. Yeah. We had a good team. You know, all the other parts or component elements of our management exec, which still only included 1 employee. It just seems remarkable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All the rest of us still being freelancers.
Yeah.
You know, he was being groomed to take over as number 1, somebody I'd known a long time, and had been persuaded to leave his employers in 2015 and come on board with this promise of, you know, great job. I'm old, I'm leaving. But yes, I did stay on for 3 years, probably longer than he thought I would. And during that 3-year period, I mean, we hit all but 7 figures. In fact, well above 7 figures, because they were then paying me quite a lot to stay on.
Yeah.
From a business that simply was a standing start.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good business. It's a good example. I've used it before, but I think one of the things I like about it is that everyone sort of won, really, because
yes,
the client's got a better service and at a lower cost. The purchaser got a good deal.
Yes,
but so did the management. I mean, I think we did okay out of it. So
one could say that it's quite unusual to come out of that type of environment and with that in-game transaction where everybody is happy.
Yeah,
but they were and still are. I mean, this is a business that still thrives. The customers, the original customer, and the second one besides that we picked up in 2017, are still customers. So it's been good for the purchaser. Fantastic relationship maintained throughout, and I'm still in touch with them. And yet, actually, I fully retired 18 months ago.
Yeah. So you keep telling me,
yeah. Well, I haven't, but yeah.
No. Right. Just can you perhaps just to finish off, give 3 tips to someone who might be starting the journey, but where we were back in 2010. You don't have to stick with finance if you don't want to, because I know it's not your favourite subject. But what would you advise somebody who was looking to build a business like this?
It's very difficult when you're starting on your own. I mean, it's because I'd owned businesses previously, I'd understood the importance of people, having the right people. Well, very often an entrepreneur doesn't have that luxury. I might not be able to afford that luxury, but any form of management team, if you can assemble one that is plug and play or similar, because you simply can't afford day one to have them, I would say that you need to remember that it doesn't really matter what the numbers are, because they're not going to rush and save you when you get into a difficult period. It's the people around you that will help you get through that. And so for me, my number one principle was then, and would be now, that I want to try and think that I've got people around me in the management team that I can call upon if I need them, to help me get through the difficult times. And for a startup, the difficult times, unless you're blessed with a huge amount of share cap, is managing your cash and understanding where the cash is going to be going that you've managed to start with. That's going to enable you to get that first revenue through the door and understand that those revenue streams, cash being very important, but actually you've still got to make a profit.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll burn through your share cap and the revenue as it comes in. So for me, it is people, it is finance, very close second, and they may rank equally, because without either you're going to struggle, I would suggest, unless you're very, very lucky, particularly if your venture is going to take time to get going. You know, when you make that standing start, you know, very often if you've got a massive target audience, you can get some revenue coming in. If you go into a sector where that's not possible, the long game is inevitable, as we experienced. And my third my third tip would be, if you're not truly passionate about what you're going to be doing, you probably won't succeed. You've got the energy you need, your ability to pick yourself up when things go wrong, and they will go wrong. I mean, I would say maybe you could summarize it with, so many business plans are based upon best case scenarios, made up numbers, dare I say it. I mean, we've all had to do it. But really, that's not a business plan. That's just business hopes and dreams. But we come back to that plan as such when you've got a good, robust finance person who is going to ensure good disciplines. Entrepreneurs tend not to be great disciplinarians.
No.
Because they're visionaries, they're innovators. They're not pragmatic at all. And if they were pragmatic, the business would never get off the ground, because you'd think that's far too big a risk. And you can't be risk averse.
No, you need those different voices on the team, don't you?
Yeah. And as a business matures, I come from, it's always been a small business sector, but going back 30 years, as my business is matured, I always brought in independent directors, because one, they bring a whole different way of thinking and understanding, and it's a good way of being challenged, and it's therefore a very good way of understanding that actually, to get on in business, you have to accept that not everybody's going to like you, and you're going to have difficult times with people.
Yeah.
But that just goes with the territory.
Yeah.
But it's a good territory. Go for it.
Brilliant.
It'll be worth
okay.
it.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. I hope I've given a little bit of insight, and more than anything, that it can be used to give other people a bit of an understanding in a practical context.
Yeah. I think it's a great case study. Lots of things to learn from it, and I've written some bits about it as well over the years.
It does prove you need a bit of luck, though.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good all your systems and disciplines are in the end. Either through finding right people, being able to develop, a system that converts your innovative thinking into a tangible methodology to process the work that you bring in. Yeah. Probably
Great.
just as well I'm past my sell-by date.
I'm sure.
As you know, we've just developed an app, Andy. So there we are.
Yeah. Another little hobby for you to keep you going.
You can teach an old dog new tricks,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, thank you, and for all the help you've given me over the years. We've been associated for, I think, 23 years, one way or another.
Yeah.
1999. I've benefited enormously from your experience. So I hope others do too, as you're so young.
Yeah, it's not something I'm accused of very often. Right. Thank you very much.
Okay then.
Cheers.
Thank you, Andy. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.